fundamentally broken immigration system is working.
Bullshit.
Over the last few months, House Republicans have been gearing up to launch a potential impeachment proceeding
to the committees, and also CBP did not allow the chief to come and testify publicly before Congress on the border issue back in February. Now the chairman want a briefing from CBP as well as documents related to their decision to relocate the chief. And this comes at a time when the Department of Homeland Security is reporting a 65% drop in the number of illegal encounters since May. Critics argue that this is simply because the Biden administration's policies are changing the way they're processing what would be illegal immigrants. Here's how Congressman Chip Roy explains it.
We've had almost 500,000 people processed through the One app, so all we're doing is diverting how people are coming to Texas.
But DHS Secretary Mayorkas says that these newly created legal pathways deter cartel smuggling.
We use our discretionary authority under humanitarian parole. We have sought to disincentivize people from taking that dangerous journey.
And Democrats defend this, saying that policies like this are what's needed in the current geopolitical atmosphere.
The world is economically devastated, and the only game in town, meaning the only economy in the world today that is hitting on all 8 cylinders, is the United States of America.
Gotta be a Democrat.
To their point of view that Secretary Mayorkas has lost operational control of the border. Some Republicans have filed articles of impeachment against Mayorkas to remove him from office. Others want to cancel his salary. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And how does the U.S. strategy in the Indo-Pacific shape global dynamics? And what role does China play in that region? Two Washington officials made some assessments today. NTD's Sam Wang brings us the details.
The Brookings Institution hosted 2 Biden administration officials discussing the strategic importance of the Indo-Pacific alliance.
We believe that much of the history of the 21st century will be written in the Indo-Pacific. America's future security and prosperity is inextricably linked to developments in this consequential region.
Dan Crittenbrink serves as the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs. He noted that the U.S. is committed to strengthening partnerships in the Indo-Pacific to enforce rule-based international order. Crittenbrink mentioned that China remains a challenge for regional security, and the best way to manage that hurdle is to bolster allies.
We have a regional strategy of which China is a part and not the other way around. Our allies and partners are intrinsically valuable to us. That's going to be the focus of our efforts across the region.
China has recently stepped up its aggression in the Indo-Pacific region. Back in May, a Chinese fighter jet made a dangerous maneuver towards a U.S. aircraft, cutting right in front of its nose. According to the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, that move forced the U.S. aircraft to fly through its wake turbulence. On the defense front, Eli Ratner, the Assistant Secretary of State for Indo-Pacific Security Affairs, said that Washington is working closely with Australia and the UK.
So a conventionally armed, nuclear-powered submarine for the Australians that we would be working on trilaterally with the UK as well. We completed a decision around the optimal pathway at the end of the 18-month consultation period.
As for Washington's next move in the Indo-Pacific, Secretary of State Antony Blinken has a trip to the region scheduled for next week. He'll be visiting Tonga, New Zealand, and Australia. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wang, NTD News.
Up next, Florida considering legal action against Anheuser-Busch. Governor Ron DeSantis says investments in Bud Light's parent company are hurting the state's pension fund. And a Southern California school district votes to require schools to notify parents if their child identifies as transgender. Both supporters and critics of the policy attended the heated meeting. These stories and more when we return.
Pension fund investments in Anheuser-Busch, the beverage company, took a huge hit in sales. That came after Bud Light worked with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney for promotional content. Months afterwards, Bud Light sales are still down over 20%. DeSantis now says the company violated legal responsibilities to its shareholders. Companies are supposed to aim for maximum profit. DeSantis alleges Anheuser-Busch put ideological motivations before profit. The governor sent a letter to the pension fund's interim director, writing, "We must prudently manage the funds of Florida's hardworking law enforcement officers, teachers, firefighters, and first responders in a manner that focuses on growing returns, not subsidizing an ideological agenda through woke virtue signaling. DeSantis told Fox News that the fund already took a hit due to the drop in Bud Light sales. Watch.
Well, we had over $50 million worth of InBev stock in the pension. Of course, Florida's pension fund's about $180 billion. So it's a pretty big endeavor, but it has absolutely hurt teachers. It has absolutely hurt other pensioners.
DeSantis is now considering taking legal actions against Anheuser-Busch. Meanwhile, political experts are speculating DeSantis is rebooting his campaign. That's because the governor keeps trailing far behind former President Trump in the polls. Reports came out this week saying his campaign let go of few staffers. According to NBC, voters might see the changes in the way he campaigns. For example, attending smaller events in order to save money and sitting down for interviews with a wider range of national media outlets. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
A school district in Southern California has decided to notify parents if their child is identifying as transgender. The heated board meeting lasted nearly 4 hours, and California's superintendent of public instruction was escorted out at one point.
The Chino Valley Unified School District voted to require schools to notify parents if their child identifies as transgender.
Mr. Na?
Aye.
And I'm a yes. The motion passes 4-1.
Under this new policy, the district schools let parents know if their child is identifying as a gender different from what is listed on their birth certificate. This applies to students who want to change their names and pronouns and access gender-based bathrooms, sports teams, and locker rooms. Supporters of the policy say parents have the right to know if their child is coming out.
I should be the one to consult my children. Nobody else has the right to say what I can or cannot teach my children. Just like I'm not pushing my family values on anybody, I don't want them to push it on my family.
But critics of the decision say it impacts gender identity and safety.
This policy
What a crock.
will out a student, putting them into a hostile household, which will further their mental degradation to the point where they will harm themselves.
Bullshit.
During the meeting, California Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, also spoke in support of LGBT students.
That nearly half of students who identify as being LGBTQ+ are considering suicide. I ask you to consider this, that the policy that you consider tonight not only may fall outside of the laws that respect privacy and safety for our students, but may put our students at risk because
What a
they may
crock
not
of
be in
bullshit.
homes where they can be safe.
After exceeding the 1-minute time limit, multiple security personnel escorted him away. But board president Sonia Shah argued that politicians shouldn't assume that non-affirming households would be a toxic environment for their kids.
Right now, they're saying non-affirming households are dangerous. Where do you get that? Actually, if you ask me, and I've listened to tons of parents, it's actually very safe to be a non-affirming, loving, caring household, because guess what? They're going to provide and pull their child in closer, the necessary needs that they need to be able to get better.
In the end, the board passed the policy in a 4-1 vote, with only board member Donald Bridge voting no.
And staying with schools, the White House recently announced a new Department of Education coordinator to take action against what they said is the growing threat that book bans pose for the civil rights of students. The statement also suggests that schools better put the books back on the shelves or lose federal funding. But parents and some lawmakers are pushing back. Darlene Sanchez is a reporter for the Epoch Times, and she's been covering this topic. I spoke with her earlier today.
If you saw the images, you wouldn't want them.
Darlene, welcome. Educational materials in schools is in the spotlight. Parents you spoke to are concerned that they're being targeted by the federal government for restricting sexually explicit books from schools. What's their message?
Well, parents basically have been fighting, for I guess a good 2 years or so to try to remove sexually explicit materials that have been showing up inside of their school libraries and sometimes inside of classrooms. So this has been an ongoing battle for them. And what the concern is right now is that the Biden administration is basically found what they see as a workaround. And, you know, parents have been at the local level, at the grassroots level, trying to get school board people elected that are
housing. A Wednesday press release reads that immigrants who do not find alternative housing by the time their 60 days are complete will be required to reapply for a new placement at the arrival center.
We have no more room in the city, and we need help for the federal government.
The mayor of the sanctuary city asked the federal government for financial support. He also asked for regulation which allows illegal immigrants to work. According to
Send them back.
The policy will create critically needed space for arriving families with children seeking asylum, given there's an average of 300 to 500 people still arriving each day. The mayor also announced the city will distribute flyers at the U.S.-Mexico border, telling newly arrived migrants to consider another city.
There are social media sites that are promoting New York City. We want people to be faced with the real reality at the border.
The mayor says New York did more than any other city to support illegal immigrants, but added that they can't continue doing so without help from the federal government. Meanwhile, House lawmakers on Wednesday passed an immigration bill. It would ban public K-12 school facilities from being used as shelter for illegal immigrants. A New York representative introduced the bill earlier this month, which gained support from Republicans. Among them, New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis.
The problem is, if you look at New York City right now, you'll see that there are more illegal immigrants being housed in our shelters than American citizens. Walk down the streets of the city and you see homeless New Yorkers.
Schools that fail to comply with the bill risk losing federal
All over the country.
It is also unclear if the bill will pass the Senate, where Democrats hold a slim majority. And ICE revealed new numbers this week regarding the so-called parole with condition policy. The policy allowed for illegal immigrants to be paroled into the United States under the expectation that they check in with ICE within 60 days. They were also supposed to receive a notice to appear. A federal judge blocked the policy in May, but Homeland Security still released over 2,500 illegal immigrants under the policy. They argued these individuals had already been processed. New numbers released this week show that out of those 2,500, over 40% never checked in with ICE after being released. And out of those who did check in, only 18% received a notice to appear. The judge who blocked the policy called these numbers troubling.
Next.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized about 860,000 fentanyl pills at the Otay Mesa Port of Entry's cargo facility in San Diego. They were concealed inside of porcelain sinks. A 45-year-old male Mexican national was applying to enter the U.S. on June 26th through the port in a cargo van. He presented a valid border crossing card and the shipment of 2 porcelain sinks. While they were taken in for inspection, officers noticed anomalies in the port imaging system. A canine team also inspected the shipment. The pills consisted of 12 packages. In total, they weighed about 190 pounds with an estimated street value of about $2.6 million. After the officers seized the shipment, van, and fentanyl pills, they turned the driver over to Homeland Security investigations.
Frustrated by what they call a lack of representation, some residents of El Dorado County plan to split from the Golden State and form their own state.
According to the group Republic for El Dorado State, some residents of El Dorado County want to split from California to create their own state. Organizers of the group said that the residents of El Dorado County have no local, state, or congressional representation. They say the state's border policies, sanctuary policies, and rampant crime violate the county's rights. They plan to take the matter directly to Congress, bypassing the state legislature. However, Margaret Russell, a law professor at Santa Clara University and constitutional law expert, disagreed with the group. She told the Epoch Times that the U.S. Constitution doesn't say anything about the role of counties and makes it clear the state is a relevant stakeholder. But the group points to the fact that 46% of the land in El Dorado County is federal forest land, and the county was created in February of 1850, which was before the state became incorporated into the Union in September of that year. Now, the group is planning to hold another town hall on July 10th.